Hey, what's up, mortals? It's the Silent Sheepdog here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 1 of If Deku Had the System. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back, relax, you're in for a treat. And so, we begin. You have earned the right to become a player. Will you accept? Those were the only words that Izuku could hear. He did not understand what was happening. He was being choked out by a villain made of sludge, and was about to lose consciousness, but it seemed as if the world had stopped. You do not have much time remaining. If you refuse, your heart will stop approximately 0.02 seconds after. Will you accept? The mysterious voice then said, and the green-haired boy only panicked. The mere mention that he was going to die terrified him. But he had a chance. If he accepted, would he live? Izuku steeled himself after hearing this, deciding to take this second chance as his mind bellowed. I accept! Before a blinding light engulfed him completely. After this event, Izuku was found by All Might. The blonde hero was originally chasing a villain, only to find no trace of it. Then, upon seeing the young boy, he came close to panicking as he rushed to get help. The green-haired boy woke up in a hospital bed thinking that what had happened was no more than a dream. But once he saw the strange game-like menu in front of him, he was shocked and realized that it wasn't a dream. Izuku really didn't know how to properly process this. He assumed that the so-called menu was like that in a video game, and started going through it. He soon found that among many things, he had an inventory, a quest log that currently showed a daily quest, titles, and a stats window. The green-haired boy was infinitely fascinated by this strange menu, unsure if it was a quirk or not. His attention was then caught by the stats window, specifically the one that showed what level he was at. It's almost like a video game, he muttered, carefully thinking about the possibilities this could present. The next few months were quite brutal for Izuku. At first, he didn't take the daily quest seriously, but he would learn not to make that mistake twice. After failing to complete the rather simple quest, which consisted of doing a regular workout every day, he was presented with the penalty quest, at which his life flashed before his eyes once more. As time passed, he leveled up and grew stronger, eventually earning access to what was called instance dungeons, where he would have to kill various types of monsters to gain experience and loot. The idea of killing anything bothered Izuku heavily, but he suppressed these emotions when realizing that hesitation would only get him killed. However, these emotions would find their way out eventually. One day, he got the opportunity to take on a quest that supposedly would give him what the system called a job. And it only made matters worse. The fact that most of the monsters, including the boss, were humanoid knights, only made things more unbearable than usual. But it peaked for the worst when he was actually assigned a job. Necromancer. Which then evolved into Shadow Monarch. That is the job he was given. He knew what it meant, but the impact didn't fully hit him until he had actually used his newfound powers. Arise, Midoriya said, voice trembling due to the ignorance of what he was doing. Once these words were uttered, the atmosphere changed. The corpses of dead knights and magicians now rose once more, but they were not the same. Coated in an ominous aura, they all stood in formation around him, as if they were awaiting his orders. The green-haired boy trembled even more as his eyes made it to the now revived boss. In life, it was called Blood Red Commander Igris, but it was reduced to a literal shadow of its former self. Its once red and stunning armor was now a menacing black, one that would never reflect any light ever again. Izuku couldn't bear this sight, as he fell down to his knees with trembling limbs. No, what have I done? He muttered, his voice becoming more and more unstable by the second. He started taking in multiple shallow breaths, stress and panic rising more with each one. The shadow that was formerly known as Igris noticed this and worriedly made its way to its master, but he went unnoticed. This can't be! I have to kill! I have to kill if I want to grow stronger! The teen shouted, until he could hear the rapid beating of his own heart. It only got worse, as he eventually lost all of his awareness. He just couldn't accept it. He had killed to survive and get stronger, but it didn't mean that he liked it. He hated it, in fact. And now, it was the only thing that he had been recognized for. He couldn't be a hero with this power. People would fear and curse his existence. Izuku's mind was breaking in the worst way, unable to cope with this horrible result. He was about to lose consciousness as a result, if it wasn't for a powerful voice that shouted, "My liege, snap out of it!" Right before a burning pain appeared in his left cheek, the greenette managed to regain his awareness, only to be confused. The person that had spoken to him was the shadow soldier of Igris, and he assumed that he'd been slapped by him as well. "Calm down, my liege. Breathe," the shadow then called, a hint of urgency being present in its voice. Izuku did as it said, regaining most of his senses in the process, until he got confused by what was happening. "Wait, you couldn't talk just a second ago. Why can you do it now?" the green-haired asked, clearly showing that he was confused. Igris seemed to be equally confused, as he raised a hand to his chin while saying, "That I do not know. Suddenly I could speak, so I did." Now Izuku was even more confused, for Igris hadn't changed any other way. He took to the system for an answer, and there he found his answer. In the logs, it mentioned a message that he hadn't heard. The system had somehow noticed his panic and sent measures to prevent it, which must have been Igris. How sentient is this thing? Izuku muttered to himself, wondering if he should start to consider the system as a living being instead of a simple video game. "Are you okay now, my liege?" the voice of Igris then said, knocking Izuku back to attention. But the second that he looked at the shadow, he could feel nothing but guilt taking him over. I'm sorry," the greenette muttered, his voice growing weak. Igris only looked confused upon hearing this, as he responded by saying, "For what reason do you apologize?" with a curious tone. Izuku was bewildered by this, for it sounded like Igris didn't understand the meaning behind his words. "What do you mean? I killed you, and then I turned you into this thing!" he shouted, trying to make his subject understand the gravity of his situation. Igris did not react to this, shaking its head while saying, "I harbor no disgust towards my new form, as I do not hold any hatred against you," with a calm voice. Izuku was even more baffled by this, as he shouted, "How do you not hate me? You would be alive if it wasn't for me. I'm a monster. I shouldn't exist. The world will resent me for this power, and I can never be a hero like this." Letting the rest of his pent-up emotions as tears began to stream from his face, Igris, despite his new form, was pained by this. He had nothing but loyalty and admiration for his new master, and he wanted to tell him why. The shadow-clad knight stood up from his kneeling position, before turning his face towards the empty throne that stood in the hall. He was silent for a few seconds, And then he spoke up with his powerful voice. That throne wasn't always empty. I used to serve the king that sat on that throne, and I showed my eternal loyalty, even after he left me. I guarded this hall for as long as my memory serves me, hoping that he would one day return. But even as I began losing hope with time, then I met you. Izuku was thrown off by these last few words. He felt bad for Igris, but now he was confused. The knight turned its helmed expression towards its new king as it continued to speak. When you entered this hall, I had already decided that I would die to protect this throne. And as we fought, I became more hopeful. I was hopeful that you could free me from this never-ending task. But you did more than just that. You gave me a second chance, and I vowed to never leave your side. Igris then stopped, fully turning towards Izuku before walking up to him. The knight then kneeled down to level with the boy, placing one hand on his shoulder before saying, You are not a monster. You are my hero. You freed me from my loneliness and gave me new purpose. If that's not heroic, then the world be damned. With a prouder voice than before. Izuku didn't know how to respond to this. Even when the world would hate him, even when he hated himself. This person didn't. He admired him. He even called him a hero. He couldn't help but cry tears of gratitude, for someone finally believed in him. The greenette then gathered himself, wiping the tears from his eyes as he stood up again. Are you all right now, my liege? Igris then asked. Hoping that his master had picked himself up, Izuku smiled upon hearing this, looking at his faithful companion, as he had answered by saying, Yeah, I'm fine now. With a more joyous tone, Igris showed signs of a smile under his helmet as he then asked, Then, what is our next course of action? Izuku thought for a second, before looking at Igris with a more serious expression and answering, I will change the world, and I'll make them accept people like me. But right now, there are a few issues that need to be addressed. Igris was rather intrigued by this response, as he then asked, What may those issues be, my liege? With a curious yet serious tone. Izuku scratched his chin, his eyes wandering around the room to see what currently was his shadow army, as he said, People can't know that I have this power. Even if they accept the fact that it revolves around death, they'll start asking where it came from. With a rather informative voice, Igris was more confused now, as he asked, Do others have powers where you're from? With a voice that reflected his confusion. Izuku looked confused himself. But then he realized that Igris probably knew nothing about his world. That's when he explained what quirks were, how they worked, and about heroes. Igris was intrigued by all of this, and his mind was immediately put into thought. That's when he got an idea. My liege, you obtained my dominator's touch, correct? The knight then asked, sounding like he had something planned. Izuku thought for a second, before realizing that he had obtained that telekinesis-like skill by crushing the runestone that he gained after slaying Igris. Yes? Why? The green-haired boy responded, wondering what his companion had in mind. Oh, the knight lit up upon hearing this as he said, You can use that as a decoy, and then pretend that it's your power. You said that quirks are hereditary in your world. You could pass it off as an alternate version of your mother's power. With a more serious tone, Izuku's eyes widened when he heard this, for it was a good idea. He could hide his shadow army from everyone and use Dominator's touch with basically no suspicion. The green net smiled upon realizing this, as he looked towards his knight companion and asked, "Your name is Igris, right?" The knight looked a little shocked to hear this, as he kneeled before saying, "My previous name does not matter, my liege. You may bestow upon me with whatever name you see fit," with a more formal tone than before. Izuku only chuckled upon seeing this, as he smiled and said, "I like Igris, so I'll keep calling you that," with a joyous tone. Igris was shocked upon hearing this, not expecting this kind of answer. It made him happy, however, for now he knew that he made the right choice when choosing to serve this new king. "Now then, we should get started," Izuku then said, reaching his hand toward his subject. Igris was once again shocked, but he quickly shook that off as he grabbed the hand and rose up while saying, "If that's what you wish, my liege." This video was sponsored by Honey. Honey is a free browser add-on available on Google, Opera, Firefox, and Safari. If it's a browser, it has Honey. Honey automatically saves you money when you check out on sites like Amazon, Papa John's, and Kohl's. Wherever you shop, it's a good chance that Honey can save you money. All you have to do when you're checking out at these big sites is click on that little orange button and it'll scan the entire internet and find discount codes for you. It takes 2 clicks to install Honey. Now, anytime you check out, Honey will scan the entire internet and find coupon codes for you. If there's a coupon code, they'll find it. And if there's not a coupon code, you can rest assured that you are getting the best price possible. If you install Honey right now, you can save so much money on your online shopping doing nothing. There's no reason not to install Honey. It takes 2 clicks. 10 million people use it. 100,000 5-star reviews. Unless you hate money, you should install Honey. Use the link in the description to start saving money now. After this event, Izuku's plan went into action. He presented Dominator's touch to his mother, hiding both the system and the Shadow Army from everyone. Of course, she bought it, and she was overjoyed that her son now had a quirk. He didn't get to rest, however, for he still needed to train and prepare for the UA entrance exam. He cleared more dungeons, increased his numbers, and leveled up. Then the exam rolled up, and it wasn't that impressive when compared to what he's already faced. Using nothing but Dominator's touch, he managed to rack up a good amount of points, going as far as to save another contestant from being crushed. Therefore, he wasn't at all surprised to hear that he had passed, but he was still overjoyed to see it. Then, a week after the news got to him, it was time for the first day. Izuku made his way through the massive building that was UA high, looking for the classroom door that would read 1A. He already had an idea of where to go, so now it was only a matter of getting there. However, something important came to his mind. The greenette turned around, before looking down at his own shadow. It looked normal, for the most part, but within it, he could see traces of his shadow army lying there in wait. "Igris, there's something that I need to address," he said, his voice sounding commanding, like a leader. Once these words were uttered, the greenette could see the features of said knight appearing in his shadow without taking full form. "What is it, my liege?" Igris then whispered, already knowing that he can't draw any attention. Izuku then turned around, pretending to walk normally again, as he whispers his intentions. "I've already told you that I need you to stay hidden, so I can only say this to further enforce the importance of it. You cannot, under any circumstances, show yourself to anyone. Got that?" Igris's eyes widened upon hearing this. He knew that he couldn't let anyone see him, but Izuku's words made it seem like he also wasn't allowed to help him. "But, my liege, what if the situation becomes urgent? Am I not allowed to aid you?" the knight uttered, hoping that his king would understand the source of his concern. Izuku sighed upon hearing this, understanding where Igris was coming from, as he answered, "I'll try to handle things on my own. But you're right. I'll call you forth if I ever need your help. Until then, I need you to stay put." With a calm voice. Igris had wished for a slightly different answer, but he was content with this. He understood what he needed to do, and he wasn't going to fail his task. "Yes, my liege," the knight responded, showing his understanding. Izuku couldn't give much of a response to this, as he had just found the entrance to his classroom. In front of him was a massive door. So massive that it could be called gigantic. This shocked him a little, but he quickly steeled himself before sliding it open. On the other side, he was met with a classroom, with some students already in their seats. He didn't get to fully take it in, however, as his attention was caught by an argument that was happening. "Take your feet off the desk! You're being disrespectful!" a familiar blue-haired boy exclaimed, while waving his hand in a robotic fashion. The greenette then turned his attention towards the person that he was speaking to, only to frown upon doing so. "Shut up, you extra!" the loud and aggressive voice of Katsuki Bakugo growled in response. The blue-haired teen then proceeded to argue with the blonde. But Izuku couldn't hear any of it. He was far too annoyed and aggravated by the presence of Bakugo, feeling a deep desire to bring out one of his daggers and attack. "I'm Tenya Ida. It's nice to meet you," a voice then said, knocking Izuku out of his aggressive thoughts. He then looked to notice that it was the blue-haired boy, so he calmed himself before responding by saying, "I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you too," with a gentle smile. Ida smiled back at the green-haired boy before speaking once again. "Midoriya, you managed to see the true purpose of the exam. I must say that as a student you are far more superior than me," the blue-haired teen said, humbling himself as he did. Izuku was about to respond by saying that it wasn't true, but he didn't get to do so before an unwanted voice muttered, "He's more superior to you in every way." Ida looked confused upon hearing this, for he didn't recognize that voice in any way. "Who said that?" the blue-haired teen asked, sounding like he was questioning reality to a certain extent. Izuku held an awkward smile, stomping his right foot onto his shadow, as he responded by asking, "Who said what?" quite awkwardly. Luckily, Ida brushed it off immediately, and Izuku got silently annoyed at Igris for saying that. "I know that messy hair!" a feminine voice then exclaimed. Izuku turned around to see that it was the same brown-haired girl that he had saved during the entrance exam. "I'm Ochiko Uraraka. It's so nice to meet you. Also, thank you for saving me back then," she said with a smile of her own. Izuku held his own smile as he responded by saying, "I'm Izuku Midoriya. And there's no need to thank me. I only did what any hero would have done in that situation," with a much calmer voice. Uraraka's smile grew much broader after hearing this, while Ida lowered his head in what could only be shame. The room fell silent after that, until the same unwanted voice decided to break it. "She's much cuter than I remember," it muttered, sending another wave of confusion across the classroom. Who said that?" Uraraka then asked, her face beaming red. Izuku started to laugh nervously, stomping his own shadow much harder than before saying, "What? I didn't hear anything," with his awkward voice again. The room was both silent and awkward after this, with both Uraraka and Izuku slowly recovering from it. They had barely returned to their usual behavior, however, when someone else entered the conversation. "Are you done wasting everyone's time, or do I have to wait another 5 minutes?" a gruff and tired voice said, catching everyone off guard. They all looked towards it, only to see a sleep-deprived man in a caterpillar-like sleeping bag. Izuku almost let instinct take over, thinking that this was a monster that somehow followed him outside of one of the dungeons. His worries vanished, however, when the man stood up and introduced himself. "My name is Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher." the tired man said, letting his equally tired voice echo throughout the classroom. Everyone was a little shocked to hear this, for they couldn't believe that this worn-down man was their homeroom teacher. Aizawa didn't change his expression at all, as he pulled a sports uniform from his sleeping bag and said, "Put these on, and meet me in the training field," with the same voice as before. This confused a lot of people, until Uraraka spoke for them all.
"But sir, what about orientation?"
the brown-haired girl asked, sounding rather concerned. The tired teacher was unaffected once more, as he responded by saying, "My class, my rules. If you want to be heroes, then you have no time for orientation. Now put on your uniforms and don't make me wait," with a more commanding voice. Some were a little frightened by this, as they then proceeded to do what their teacher told them. On their way to the changing rooms, however, the unwanted voice let out another comment. "I like him." Everyone was once again confused, but they didn't bother to ask where it came from because they knew that they wouldn't get an answer. Izuku got more annoyed upon hearing this as he quietly growled, "Shut your mouth, Igris!" sharing his annoyance. Igris appeared to quietly chuckle in amusement upon hearing this, as he watched his very heated master make his way to the locker rooms. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects that our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.